The year is 2014, and YouTube launches the last of its great vintage toy restoration channels. In a freak mishap, toy-polloi is thrown out of the forums and into an orbit which freezes his internet access, returning toy-polloi to our screens 500 years later.
Welcome to toy-polloi. Parental guidance. This video contains scenes of Lego destruction.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi, and this is part 2 of the vintage Mego Buck Rogers in the 25th century Starfighter restoration and customization project. In part 1 you saw me take apart and sort of repair one of the 2 Starfighters that I was sent in, and in this one we're going to start doing some of the customization on this second Starfighter. Now, as you can see, this already has been cleaned up. I've removed all of the stickers from it, and it has some replacement parts added to it. These are sort of custom made pieces. We've got custom sort of nose cones, we've got custom wings, and these sort of custom engine pieces. And in the meantime, between this video and the last one, I got in touch with Fred from Stonegate Creations, who makes these parts, and asked him if he could help me with a sort of couple of little sort of custom pieces to go on this project. And I have to say, the package has just arrived. So the first thing we're going to do in this video is actually open up this package and see what new parts Fred has sent to me. What I really wanted from him was, I think he said that he'd updated some of the models and the sort of bits that he prints out for these. So they are going to be newer versions, I think newer sort of more screen accurate versions. And I also wanted to get some holes put in these nose cones here so that I can make the lasers actually work. So let's see what Fred has sent, and we can then get on with the rest of this customization. So here's the box. Let's just get this open. It's taken a few weeks for this to arrive. There was a problem with some customs and import duty type stuff. I always seem to suffer with when getting packages sent here, but it has finally arrived, and it's something that I've been waiting for. So let's see what is inside it. Perhaps if I cut the right pieces of the box. There we go. So we've got a full set of stuff and a little note. So let me have a quick read of that, and then we'll take a look at what's inside properly. It says, "Hi Dave, here are complete parts to rebuild a Starfighter and Land Rover, including the extended nose cones with the through holes. Some small parts are in Starfighter engines, along with a special custom piece that I hope you enjoy. Hopefully they all survive the shipment. Let me know if you need any other parts, and thanks for making all the great videos." That's from Fred at Stonegate Creations. I will be putting a link to where you can get these parts in the description for this video, so do check that out. But as you can see here, he's included pieces for the Land Rover, which is something I have needed parts for a long time. So let's take a look at what it is. So look, a whole load of lovely bits, all very well wrapped up. And I'll start to open these up. So I can tell these are the rear engine cones. I have a feeling these have been updated or sort of modified a bit. But the original ones that he sent did look very good anyway. So we've got 2 cones here, so it's 2 replacement engine cones. Oh, and as he said, there are bits inside, so let's see what these are. Ah, right. Now these are the little light pieces for the Land Rover. I will bring my Land Rover in a second. We'll check out these and make sure they fit properly. So these are the little lights that go on top of the Land Rover. I'm missing one of those, and have been ever since I first picked up my Land Rover, which I think I've had in my collection for about 20 odd years. So since that time I've never managed to get the sort of replacement parts. Oh yeah, so this is a replacement chest for Wilma. I think he's sort of given her slightly larger cleavage, shall we say there. So that's pretty cool. I will try that on one of my figures and see what that looks like. And we've got some other pieces here. This looks like the gun for the Land Rover. That's one piece that I do actually have on mine. So we've got lights, we've got the gun. And I know what these are. These are the side panels. Again, I'm missing one of these. It's a hard sort of ship to find complete, so I've never sort of managed to find replacement parts, but there you go. These are the side panels for the Land Rover, so that's really nice. Those are very useful. I'm guessing all these other bits will be for the Starfighter, and these are the bits that I need for this project. Alright, so here are the modified cones. These are the ones that I asked for, as I say, so these have got holes in them. You can see there. I was going to drill these holes, but I thought Fred was making modifications anyway. He said that he would happily do that for me. So these have holes, and I'm intending to insert some sort of thin pieces of perspex, or maybe a piece of Lego in that, to let the light shine through and make it look like the lasers are firing. So those are perfect, exactly what I needed. Then we have, right, those are versions of the original nose cones. The other one that I've sort of repaired in the first part of this project, the nose cones were both snapped, sort of cracked, and I don't really think there is a way to repair those. So these are replacements of the original ones, which are very nice. I'll put those there. And what have we got here? We have got a landing gear, and then I think there's a couple of more pieces here. So these are some updated wings to go on the Starfighter. They've got some extra bits on them. I think there's some little pieces on the bottom here. These are now made out of one piece. If I bring in this original, oh no, there's still got the little bits on it, but this is printed as one piece. These pieces on this original one here that he sent over are stuck on, so that's a new single print of those. As he said, he'd been updating a lot of these. It's always interesting to see the sort of the progress and the changes that are made to these. So there's some wings, and then we've got one final piece here, which is something I didn't show in the last video because I hadn't actually got it. This is a 3D printed canopy as well. So now there are all the parts that you need if you want to make your own Starfighter or repair your own Starfighter, because often the canopies are broken, these front prongs are broken, the rear engine blocks are broken, so it's all these parts are available, so that's brilliant. Right, first thing I think I wanted to do is actually try these pieces on the Land Rover that I have. So this is my Land Rover, which, as I say, I've had in my collection for possibly about 20 years, and this is exactly how I got it all those years ago. It was missing pieces. I don't think I've even ever cleaned it. It's just the sort of, I picked it up and put it on a shelf, and that's how it sort of sat ever since. I dust it every once in a while, but it's just as filthy and dirty as it was the day I picked it up. But as you can see, it's missing a couple of pieces. The little sort of lights that go on the front, it came with one of them, which is here, and these are the pieces that Fred has now replaced. So you can see here, that is the replacement one, that's the original one. That's a pretty good match, and hopefully that will just slot in. Already that ship is starting to look a lot better, because yeah, without it, it does look a little bit strange. And then on the side you have these sort of weird panels. I've never really understood what they are. Are they shields or something like that? So again, my one came with one of these, and that's what that looks like if I remove it. You can see that it's sort of got a little bit of a pattern to it, sort of a grill pattern, and if we turn it over, this one is sort of hollow, but the one that Fred has made is now quite a nice sort of solid piece here. And again, that's a really good sort of recreation. These pieces are always missing on these ships. I did buy another one at some point sort of later on, which had most of these pieces missing as well, which is why I've never sort of completed it. So I can slot that in on this side. There's just a couple of holes there that it should line up with. Slot that in, and that sort of completes the vehicle. It makes it look, yeah, that's a whole load better. Fred also did send me the gun, which is one that I do have, so that's my original gun, and that is the replacement, which is again a very good match actually. It's really nicely done. These are 3D printed, so there's a few little sort of print lines on them, but the overall shape and everything is very close indeed. It's a nice high quality print actually, even to get these little ridges in that you can see on the original. It's a very good print. We'll try this one out just because I have it here. See, that fits very nicely, but for my display purposes I'm going to use the original one there. But yeah, I'm really impressed with those. It's nice to finally get this vehicle complete after all of these years with some really good quality replacements. So if you need some for your Land Rover, check out Stonegate Creations. Well worth getting a set of these to get your vehicles complete. Right, so now on to the main part of this video, which is going to be putting lights inside this Starfighter. That's the first thing I want to do, and it's probably the most complicated part of it, just because it doesn't have any electronics in it to start with, so we've got to put everything in from scratch. Now, I've done this sort of thing before. If you've watched my video on adding lights to a vintage Empire Strikes Back Slave 1, that was the same sort of process. It's just trying to work out best places to put lights and where you can put the batteries and where we can add switches and things and make it all sort of work. The first thing though on this one is I want to make these lasers actually work, and that's why I asked Fred to make some holes in the front of them so that we can put something through. Now my thinking is I have quite a few of these pieces which are Lego whip antennas. I'm going to put the number at the bottom of the screen so you can see which sort of number Lego piece these are, and you can get these in multiple colours, and these ones happen to be in a sort of clear reddy orange plastic, and I thought that's going to be quite a nice colour for the laser. So I've already cut the end off a couple of these for other projects. I've got a few without this little sort of pip on the end of it. These are very good for fixing Micronauts figures, which is why they're always missing on the ones I use. I cut them off and there happen to be some Micronauts that are this colour. But that looks like a fine piece of plastic and is something that I think will be quite nice for making the light travel down it. So Fred very kindly, as I say, put some holes in these. They are a little bit too tight, but that isn't a problem. I'd rather they were too small than too big. This is about 2mm, and I did ask him to do 2mm holes, and sometimes with printing it's not quite accurate enough, but that doesn't matter because it's very easy to change. So I've got my pin vise here, and I'm just going to drill out these holes very carefully on this one. I'm actually going to try and add a slight angle to it as well, just so it's sort of pointing slightly down. But let's get this hole drilled and then we can try and insert that piece of Lego and see if it's going to work. That's actually very easy to drill through. The plastic is quite soft, and obviously as Fred has already put the hole in there, that's going to work quite easily. I can see there's a few little bits of remnants of plastic, so I'm just going to push that end in. Oh, you can see that does actually fit perfectly. As I say, the Lego pieces are always standard sizes, so once you know the sizes you can work with them. Let's try and insert that from the other side. Oh yeah, that's good. Now I could have it with the piece of Lego sort of poking out a little bit to show some red, but I think really it would look better if it's going to be flush to the surface. So I'm going to pull that in like that, and then you can see that the light does actually start to shine through it. If I was to have an LED at the other end of this, we could make that shine quite nicely. Actually, if I cover that up, you can see you do get quite a lot of light travelling down the sort of plastic rod there. So I think that is going to work well. I'm going to drill out the other holes, and then I'm going to cut these down. And the idea is I want them to sort of bend into a shape a little bit like that, because we're going to put the LED in the front of here, sort of right in the middle. So if these are bending down, yeah, I think that will work quite nicely. So let's get these other ones prepped, and then we can try and start sorting out the wiring of everything that's got to go inside the Starfighter. Okay, well I think those are going to work out quite nicely. You can see I've now got the bits of Lego inserted in. This nose cone doesn't actually seem to want to sit on quite as flush as the other one. I've tried swapping them over, and it appears that the plastic on the front of the Starfighter is a little bit thicker on this side, so I'm going to file that down quickly so that this one just fits that little bit flusher. But overall, I'm very happy with how that's working. Those certainly are going to sort of fit on quite nicely. And the idea is there'll be an LED in here, and that will be flashing. And so when that's flashing, it will look like these lasers are firing. I think that's going to be quite an effective way of doing it. Certainly quite in keeping with how they would have done toys back when this was made. So yeah, I think that's going to work. Now we come on to the wiring, which has taken me a little while to work out exactly what I was going to do, because Robert, when he sent me the ships, asked for a couple of things that I'd not sort of tried before. One of them was the fairly basic stuff, that he wanted some blue flashing lights to go in these rear engine cones, and that was fairly straightforward because you can buy these LEDs, which I have here, which are flickering LEDs, so they look a little bit like sort of firelight, and you can get them in multiple colours. So I've got two of these as blue. So these I've wired together in parallel parallel, which means that they're sort of independent of each other. He also wanted a black light to go inside the cockpit, and again that was fairly straightforward because you can buy black light. So this is a black light LED. It's a little bit of a smaller size I got on this one because I wanted to fit it somewhere quite specific in the cockpit. So we've got some large LEDs. I think these are about 5mm in diameter, and this one's about 3. So the larger ones will be for the engines, there's a little one for the cockpit. But then Robert also said that he wanted these red flashing LEDs for the lasers at the front, which is what I've obviously been doing these pieces for. Now that needed to be on a separate switch, because obviously you want to be able to switch on one switch and get the engines and the sort of inner cockpit light coming on, and then you want the lasers on a separate switch so you can switch those on and off and not have them all the time. And that's what took me a little while to work out. So you can see here this looks fairly complicated, but it's actually pretty straightforward once I'd managed to sort of suss it out in my mind. And it's all run off one 9-volt battery. So we have one 9-volt battery with its power coming out, and the live part of the power, the positive, goes to 2 separate switches, and the negative of those goes back to the same point on this battery. So we have one switch here, and if I switch this one on, this is all temporarily wired at the moment, so it's a bit sort of buggy, but you can see we have these 2 flickering blue LEDs, and they flicker quite nicely. Works quite well. And then this is a black light to go inside the cockpit, so it doesn't show up particularly well in bright light, but you can see that is a black light. And then there's a separate switch here, and if I switch this one on, these red LEDs will flash, and you can see there they are flashing. Now the trick with the flashing LEDs, which is something I learnt when doing a snow speeder, is you only need one flashing LED. So these are wired in series. As I say, the blue ones are in parallel. The red ones are wired in series, so you have one flashing one, which I've actually marked, this is red flash, and then one normal LED that doesn't flash, because this one controls the second one. We have the flashing one first, it goes to the second one, and that's how this all works. You can see those are flashing, those are flickering, and I can switch off the engines. If I switch that one off now, those lights go off and these ones stay on, so we've got the lasers going. Likewise, if I switch those off, I can switch these ones back on and have those ones flickering. So it's just a little bit of a sort of complicated, for me anyway. I'm not that great with this sort of wiring stuff. It takes me a little while to work it out, but I think I have everything how I want it. And as I say, this is my sort of work in progress setup, so I'm using these little blocks where you can screw everything together. In the end I will actually solder this all sort of together, but for the work in progress type stuff I like these. It makes it quite easy. Now I've got the job of fitting this all inside the ship. Some of it should be easier than others. For the engines, I just need to drill holes in the back here. You can see there's a flat panel fairly far down the back, but that should be fine. And I have these little fitting pieces here, which the LEDs fit inside of, like so. So what I've got to do is drill a hole. It's quite a large hole, fit that in there, then we can slot those in. So that's an easy one. For the little cockpit backlight, I was originally going to sort of fit it underneath, but realised you won't actually see much of the light then. And then I sort of noticed there were these 2 circular panels sort of on the front part of the cockpit. So I'm going to drill a hole in one of those, and that's where this LED is going to sit, just sticking up slightly out of the surface, and that should light the cockpit quite nicely. Then obviously the 2 red ones are just going to be mounted in here, maybe with a bit of hot glue or something like that. So those don't need any sort of modifications to make them fit. But what we do need to do is put 2 switches somewhere. So on the bottom of this ship, which is pretty dull, there's not a lot of going on. I'm thinking as you hold the ship to make it fly between the 2 engines here, if I fit the switches about here, just sort of below where the little copyright information is, and I'll fit them next to each other, I think that should be a nice sort of place. It's sort of out of the way, and you can then switch them with your fingers while you're sort of flying the ship around. So I think that's probably the best point to put them. So I've got to take this ship apart and make a couple of oblong holes, which is not the easiest thing to do, but basically just I'm going to mark them out, and I'll drill a few holes and sort of sand it and file it and shape it until I've got those 2 in. And likewise I've got to drill some holes in these. So let's get all of that done, and then we can start fitting the electronics inside this old Starfighter. drilling into these nose cones has not proved the easiest of things to do, because the way these are 3D printed, the filaments are running across like that, and actually on that flat panel that was in there, they're really thin, and they're also not very well sort of stuck together. So when you drill into them, they just sort of tear apart, and you end up with sort of, it looks like a bit of a brush by the time you've finished. So I've done it as best I can, sort of slowly drilling up, getting to bigger sizes, and then when the hole was about big enough, I've sort of pushed the LED holder in place, and I've liberally painted plastic weld all around inside. You can't really see it, but that's stuck the filaments back together. Plastic weld works quite well with this sort of plastic, and I'm hoping that that will hold it sort of quite firmly. You can see it's a little bit messy when you look inside the rear of the engine, but we're going to have the light in there, and I don't think you'll be able to actually see that once the light is going. I've done both of them, as you can see, and they're sort of equally well held in place. It's not the neatest of jobs, but it should do just about what we need to do and hold everything in place. So after what seems like a few minutes for you guys watching, there's actually been quite a bit of work to cut these out and get them the right shape. I'm now going to test fit my little switches. These should clip in perfectly. The idea is to get the holes exactly the right size. So what I did was I made a little template which I measured the sides of the little switch. I've cut my little template, I've drawn that onto this surface, drilled out a load of holes, and then I've been sort of cutting away and filing away till I've got an exact match to that little template, which means that these should now just slot in place with a little bit of pressure, like so. That is perfect. Make sure I've got them about the same way. Push that one in. Lovely. So we've now got two switches that are on the underside of the ship, and we can switch them both. Yeah, it takes a little bit of time to get those to sort of fit flush, but I think it's worth the effort. Really, that's going to look quite nice when that's all put together. So now I'm going to do a test fit with the wiring and see if I can get it to work. And once I'm happy with how the wiring is going and if the lights all work, then I'll solder everything together properly and we can put the ship back together and check that it all works. But getting everything like this ready takes a little bit of time, but it's always worth the effort. Okay, so this is the sort of moment of truth really. I've just put my temporary wiring back in. There's a few issues with it. The cable to this red laser light is too short, so I can't get it where I need it to be, but that's fine. I can extend that. Everything else seems to fit. So now I can switch the buttons on the bottom. So if I switch the right button on, we should get the lasers firing, which they do. And if I switch the left button on, we get the internal sort of dark light, and then we get these engine lights which are flickering, and I can show you what that one looks like in the back of the sort of jet there. You can see that works quite nicely. You actually get quite a nice sort of starburst effect on the camera. It's working really nice with the lens of it. So I think that is quite successful. Just need to do a few little modifications to the length of some of the wires, and I'm also going to solder all of these in place anyway and get rid of the sort of temporary fixes. But for now, that is pretty good. I'm going to quickly sort of put the rest of the ship together so we can check that the lasers do the same sort of effect that these engines do. But that I'm really very happy with. It's looking very nice indeed. So as I say, this is just a rough of putting the ship together. I've essentially just sort of squeezed everything I can inside it. Now we can check this laser light. So if I switch this one on, you can see it is flashing quite nicely, and underneath it's not too bad at all. They need a little bit of repositioning to get them to work just as I want to. If I switch my filming lights off, you might get to see this better. Let's just switch that off. So you can see there, that's actually flashing quite nicely. They've got a light on the front of this camera as well, so we'll just cover that up. You can see that's flashing quite nicely, both top and bottom. I think that's going to work really well. So yeah, let's get on and solder this properly. So that is it all tidied up, and I'm just waiting for the paint to dry. As you can see, I've removed all of those sort of temporary little blocks that held all the wires together and replaced everything with soldered joints just to make it that more sort of secure and that nothing's going to break in the future. I've also tidied up the wires by just putting some tape around them just to make it a little bit neater as well, so it's not such of a mess when you open up the toy in the future. In case you need to fix it, it looks a lot neater now. The battery is now held in with some Velcro, so what I've done is just got some sticky back Velcro, stuck a piece to the battery and a piece to the inside of the Starfighter, and you can then stick that in. It's not going to rattle around and it shouldn't fall away. You know, if you're sort of playing with it, it should stay quite firmly in place. And in future, if you need to replace the battery, then you've just got to get a new piece of Velcro and stick it onto the battery. That's a nice and simple thing to do. And as you can see, I've also painted around where some of the lights are going to be, because this plastic is quite thin and also white, so you get quite a lot of light bleed. So where the red lights go for the lasers, I've painted black on the inside. I've also painted on the inside of these. Hopefully it will reduce some of the sort of glow. You can just about see the black through this. I didn't realise this print was actually quite so sort of see-through, so you can see a little bit of the black there, but I think that's sort of acceptable. And at the moment I've taken out the little bits of red Lego as well, so I'll slot that in when everything is dried. But overall, I'm very happy with how this is sort of all set up. As you can see, it still does work. If I switch those ones on there, the lasers, if I switch the other one on, you can see the engine lights are glowing, and also the black light for the inside. So everything does work. Now I've just got to wait for this paint to dry off, and I'm going to use some hot glue, I think, just to stick these in place there, and I'll put everything together and we can see what the ship looks like. But as it stands at the moment, I'm all happy with how this is working. Now, I forgot to mention earlier where I actually get these LEDs from. If you go onto eBay and search for radio control lights or RC lights, lots of these sort of pre-made LEDs with wires attached come up, so you can just buy them as you want, and they come in all sorts. So as I say, I've got some flashing ones and some sort of flickering ones, but basically on eBay there are multiple sellers selling these sorts of things, and you can also buy kits which come with the switches and the battery connector. So just look for RC or remote control lights kits, and something will come up and you'll be able to sort of pick and choose the pieces that you need. And here we go, this is the sort of moment of truth. I've loosely put the ship back together. It actually holds together without the screws in. Once you put the nose cones and the engine blocks on, that sort of actually squeezes the whole body together. So for the moment there are no screws in this, but it gives me a good chance to actually test it out. As you can see, it's looking like a Starfighter. You can see here the red lights at the front. This is just a little bit of red plastic coming through. I think I'm going to have to paint the outsides of these prints. The plastic that's used for these prints, I have no idea what it is, but you can see too much of the red through it still, even though I've painted the inside black. So I think if I paint the outsides of these, they'll look a lot better. But at the moment I'm going to leave them as is. That will be a sort of a job for the next video. If we turn it around, you can see that's what the engines look like from the back. You can't actually see there's anything particular in there. You can just about see these sort of LEDs glowing. And if I switch these lights on, you can see there they are, glowing away, and you get quite a nice sort of flickering blue engine effect there. It's also got the black light inside the cockpit, which in this bright light you can't really see. You can just about see it there. So in a minute I will switch the lights off so that we can actually see that working. And then we have the second switch here, which if I switch that on will make the lasers fire. Not sure if you can see that in the bright light, so let's switch all the lights off here and we'll see if it looks any better in the dark. Okay, so we've got a bit more subdued light going on here. I'm just going to switch on the engines and we'll see what that looks like. So you can see if I turn this round, those really do look quite spectacular. You can see them flickering away. That's a nice convincing sort of engine glow there. I like the way that looks. And then if we turn it around so you can see the cockpit, that is lit up quite nicely inside. I've put Buck inside the cockpit so you can just about see him glowing there. Always making my wall glow, all this blue light. I think that is quite a nice sort of subtle effect. So the black light is just there in the front. By the time we put some cockpit glass in here, which is going to be something for the next video, I think that will make quite a big difference. And then we've got the lasers. Let's see what these are like. This is the one I'm not sure how well it's going to work. Oh, actually that's not too bad. There's a little bit of light bleed still. You can see where I've painted the black on the inside. We need a little bit more black paint going around, so I'm going to modify that. But I quite like the fact that the whole of this front is glowing. That is actually quite nice. That works, it's quite convincing. But you can see we've got the little laser lights as well coming through at the front. They glow pretty well. I think overall I'm pleased with how this is working. A little bit more work just to sort of stop some of the bleed coming through. So we definitely need a little bit more paint spread up these parts and maybe onto this front panel. But overall, that's not bad at all. Let's see what it looks like underneath. As you can see again, yes, a little bit more black paint is needed just around the sort of edges, just to hide some of that bleed. You're always going to get some of it. I don't think there's any way to remove 100%, but overall I think that's quite impressive. So let's switch off the lasers and we'll just look at the engines again. Yeah, that is really nice. The engines are probably my most favourite part of this. That's very satisfying indeed. So I'm going to say that's it for this second part of the project. The overall effect is working really well. The engines look fantastic. I really like the light inside the cockpit. Just need to do a little bit more work on these lasers at the front. Certainly more black paint inside to try and stop some of the light bleed. I think I need to paint most of the inside part of that to stop the light bleeding around. That should help quite a bit. And then I'm not quite sure what to do on these front lasers. I like the fact in the dark that the front section does glow. So if I paint this, I don't think we'll we'll still get that. So I need to work out some way, maybe we can tint this plastic to make it match the colour of the body a bit more. You can see this is much creamier and this is a little bit too white. If we look at the rear fins, you can see these original prints that Fred sent me from Stonegate Creations are a little bit yellower, so maybe he's using a different filament or something like that on these new ones. It's just a bit too white, but there must be a way I can stain those or do something to them to get them to match the plastic. I will look into that before I come on to part 3. In part 3, obviously we'll finish that all off. I've got a pattern already made to make some cockpit glass to go in that, because I think that will look really nice, and I have also been working on all of the stickers, so that is to come in part 3. So I hope you've enjoyed this second part of the Buck Rogers Mego Starfighter customization project. Make sure to check out Stonegate Creations for the replacement 3D parts. I'll put a link in the description as to where to get those. If you've enjoyed this video, then make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video. And thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.